Welcome to the DNA Advantage podcast, where you can learn facts about your DNA that can help you live a healthier, longer life, doing all the activities you dream of doing. If you want to gain more control over your health and the factors that influence it, you're in the right place. Hi, I wanted to share this bonus podcast with you. I was a guest this month on a podcast called Dark Matter with Devyn Harakh. He's a client of mine who wanted to interview about the benefits of knowing your DNA for your health. I hope you enjoy.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Dark Matter podcast. Today, I have something very exciting for you. I know the interviews with guests have been something that a lot of you guys listening and following the show really enjoy. And so I thought I wanted to bring on someone who has been helping me in the background. Most of you guys know that I'm really big on health. I'm really big on performance. I'm really big on making sure I'm as optimal as I can be as I'm continuing to traverse the universe here. And so I actually have one of the coaches that I hold, very dear to me, Lisa Witherow, and she's going to talk a little bit about, what she does, how we've kind of helped each other, and just my experience on working with her, because I think your health is most important. And, without your health, obviously there's things that can be a lot more challenging. So with that being said, if you guys are interested in hearing more and connecting, of course, her information will be in the show notes. But Lisa, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being on here with me. If you want to just give a quick introduction as to like a little bit about who you are and how you help people currently, and then we can kind of get into a discussion.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. Wow, where do I begin? The DNA Advantage is my business, and I help people really understand the health implications of their DNA. So while you can look at things like your heritability and your ancestry, it is really valuable, in my opinion, much more valuable to the here and now to know what your DNA can do for you. How does your DNA actually function? Is it optimally functioning, or is it potentially going to throw a wrench in things when it comes to your health? And then how can we compensate for that? Because many people have come to me and said things like, this just runs in my family. I just expected it. It was a matter of time. But when you look at how epigenetics, which would be our diet, lifestyle, and our environment, are impacting our DNA, our ancestors had those factors as well. If our DNA isn't functioning at a high enough level and we have those factors, we can adjust those factors to really help our DNA function better. So it's an exciting thing, and it's newer for a lot of people. So it's a slow process to really understand and start to appreciate how much control we actually have.
Absolutely. And then I love that. And for everyone listening at home, just to really reiterate, so you have the actual business, the DNA Advantage. And so for people who have like hereditary things, I know I've even been someone that says, oh, that runs in the family, right? Or like for some people, they have certain things and it's just like, oh, well, my dad has it, my mom has it. So like it's hereditary, I need to have it. Lisa's here kind of debunking that to suggest that even if it is running in your family, you actually can change it by understanding your DNA. And so a little bit of the process on, why I wanted to work with you is because, again, health and performance, always playing soccer. I played, provincial level, which in the US would be nationals. So I played at a very high level. And so my recovery, my performance, I can't afford to be sick. I know that's like a lot of us out here. We kind of operate on the day to day, like really high performance. And so how do we continue to optimize what we're currently doing without getting sick, without burning out? And some of the things that you taught me going through that process, because I'm sure we've all experienced something where it's like, we see online there's a specific workout routine and it works really well for all these people, but when we try it, it doesn't work. right? Or there's a specific keto diet or some sort of diet that people try and it works out really well for a lot of people, but it doesn't work out for us. It's not because that routine doesn't work, it's because it's your own specific DNA and your own specific genetic makeup that once you have the toolkit to understand how your body functions, how you operate, that is literally the secret, the cheat code to all of, your own personal health and well-being. I know when I joined your program, I wanted to do it for this. And then I think it was like a couple of weeks after I fractured my ankle. So it's like, did I, welcome that in because I joined the program? No, I'm just kidding. But at the same time, right, it was so funny because, they told me it was going to be over a year before I'd start walking again. And I think it took me less than 3 months and I was already walking again because you recommended a lot of the supplements based on the DNA test that I submitted. So I want you to just share, if you can, just a little bit about like, why you got into that. Like, what is so special about DNA? How does this really differ from, some of these other health gurus and people that are just kind of like, oh, I'm a wellness coach and I help people no matter your, size, shape, and all of these things, kind of, grow and thrive.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I approached my work with that more general idea because that was what I knew. When I was young, I lost both my parents when they were young. So I was only 3 when my mom died. Obviously, I was too young to really process it and question all of the things that I now question. And when I was in my teens, I felt like I was destined to die young. And I didn't really manifest that in a way. Well, obviously, I didn't manifest it, but I'm still here. But I didn't integrate that in my actual life. Like I didn't feel like that outwardly. It was in subconsciously, I just felt like I would die young. And it was like, oh, well, I'll just do what I want to do. And I felt like I had no control. And it was just the way it was. And so I can so appreciate what you're saying when people are generalizing and thinking that just because their family members have a condition or have a certain health crisis, that they are doomed to have that as well. I lived that, but it was so freeing when I was able to get away from that. And my process of getting away from it was starting out as more of a general health approach. And it was improving my diet. When I had my first child, there was no negotiation in my house. We were not going to have any hydrogenated oils. We were not going to have high fructose corn syrup and no artificial sweeteners. Those were the 3 big ones that I said no to. And I literally threw things out of the house. I, would ask what was in things when they were made. It was crazy and became like an adamant label reader. I would not eat anything unless I read the label. Crazy. But it taught me so much about what we need to do differently and that we have some influence. And then in 2003, when the genome was sequenced, it seemed like a very distant future that we would be able to use that for our health because they were only looking at things like how to edit genes and how to clone, which, come on, like that's not at all the realm that I needed to be in. But when I realized it was right around 2009 that I started reading research about health. And let's face it, it's very often about disease and linking genes to disease because that's who's paying for the studies. It's the drug companies and the people that are in high places within different research groups that are paying for these studies. But it really does give us information, not only about what drugs should be used, but it gives us really good information about what the genes actually do and what the function is of each gene and how that impacts our health. And that's what I have studied since it really became available around 2015 is when I started really being able to access a lot of that research and really dive in. And that's when I went crazy and learned so much about DNA. And it's never just one gene. That would be one takeaway that I would want the audience to get is we'll use BRCA gene, which has been linked to breast cancer as an example. And they will say that the BRCA gene is responsible for breast cancer. And if you have the BRCA gene variant, that it would be 40% greater risk of developing breast cancer. But there are many people who have the BRCA gene variant that don't get breast cancer. So it's very hard to say. And what I would also challenge people with is if you do have a gene like that that's been labeled a disease linked gene, I want you to understand more about the disease itself and understand how it affects the body and how you can shore up your strengths of your body in order to fight or resist disease. Because think of breast cancer, that it is an estrogen related disease. And so you want to look at what are your estrogen related genes? What are your detoxifying genes? Because if you can't detoxify estrogen properly, that's what can lead to it. Being able to understand what is your exposure to plastics, because plastics are xenoestrogens. And so you need to be able to understand your body in totality and not look at it as one gene, because that makes us feel really helpless and very vulnerable when we should feel empowered and know that within our own bodies, we have many capabilities of resisting disease and recovering from disease. We need to know how to leverage those facets within our bodies rather than looking outside of ourselves all the time. I'm not saying we don't use external support, but understanding our bodies is huge.
Right. And I think it was kind of mind blowing for me when, I did the test and then you got my genes, right? Like you got all the SNPs and I could see, everything. I could see which alleles were compromised, for example. And so for me, like it's so unique because everyone knows you get, vitamin D from the sun. And, knowing that I actually had to take the supplement because the sun wasn't giving me the right nutrients, like that's something I would never know. That's something I would literally never come across, never even figure out had I not done that test, had you not shared that with me, being able to look at the specifics, right? And I feel like, something that we've been big on, I think that's why we connected so well. It's like health is the number one thing. Like there's so many monks and gurus and everyone talking about how like if your health isn't where it needs to be, it doesn't matter how successful you are. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how happy you are in your relationship. If your health isn't first and foremost, things will fall apart. And that's just the fact of the reality. And health is just so much more than just like you being healthy for you. Like most people have families, like you have other people that you need to live for, not putting it on them. But, there is a responsibility that we have to be healthy and to be optimal. And heck, there's a lot of people that, want grandkids. Like, well, what kind of parent do you want to be? Do you want to be someone that's just like, sitting at the table because you can't run and jump around and have fun? And a lot of the stuff can be, maybe nursed if you have the right nutrients and the right supplements, right? And I think there was a big part of your program where you talk about, and I love this, but you're talking about how you got to look at health with your doctor as a partnership, not something where people go to the doctor and say, hey, like this is what's going on, what do you recommend? And I want you to talk a little bit about that journey, about how we can document things that we know, because at the end of the day, no one's going to know your body better than you. Even a doctor that sees you once every couple of months, there's no way that person's going to know. It doesn't matter how much, schooling and things that they have. Everybody is different. Everybody is unique. And so like kind of talk about why you're so passionate about like really being able to track those things on an individual basis for yourself, and then looking at the healthcare system as something that you can use as a tool rather than something that you rely on for guidance.
Thank you for that question, because that is huge. That is something that is a starting point for everyone who is interested in health. Even if you've never considered doing your DNA or considered looking at the specifics of your health as an individual, if you have always gone to a doctor and thought of them as the guru that needs to tell you what to do, I think it's so important for the starting point to be to look within and understand that you can learn from your body on a daily basis. And within a few weeks, you can better understand your health. And how you do that would be to pay attention to any kind of symptoms or performance. So, as an example, if you have the desire to run faster and you really don't analyze that, think about any kind of performance. If you don't look at it and really look at every angle and understand it, it's very difficult to change because you don't understand what is lacking or what is strong. And so it's very much the same with health. You want to be able to look at where you might be falling short, and you want to see what gives you strength. If you have a really good day, let's say that you have an amazing day, you're really focused, you're in a great mood, everything seems to be clicking. And you take the time to step back and look at what set you up for that. And maybe it's every day, which makes it a little harder to figure out, but it might be every day during a certain season, and then things change. So you have to document, oh, well, it looks like when it's not sunny, I'm having this issue. So when you look at something and you understand how it's impacting your body, it gives you an inference of maybe vitamin D is an issue for me. And then you can try something, or you can do DNA analysis, whichever. But it really is, if you're just dabbling and you're just starting to learn, listen to your body and really begin to understand what foods impact you positively or negatively, what amount of sleep, what time is your bedtime, and how is that affecting you? But really being able to figure out all of the different inputs and how that is affecting your health is tremendously valuable. And then if you do need to go to the doctor, you have information to provide them. And you know yourself, it's not like you're handing off to someone who you see 15 minutes every 6 months at best. And you're saying, oh, here, I just need you to figure this out. Of course, they're going to give you a pill, because what else is there? At that point, they don't really know the details. They don't really know the intricacies of your life. They might ask you if you have been eating well, if you've been sleeping well, but they don't have any real indicators and they don't really have the details. So it's super valuable to have that information, and it's so empowering.
Yeah, it really is, right? And I love this because I think you shared an experience with your daughter who had a headache, and people were telling you like you're never going to figure it out. But because you were meticulous and like, okay, what is she eating? Where is she going? Like, what is she doing? You were able to figure out something within, what was it, a couple of weeks,
Yeah, it was 2 weeks. Yeah.
right? And so it's so interesting because there's a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs that listen to this podcast. We track our business, right? We track our workouts. We track, almost everything else in our lives, but we don't track our health. We don't track when things are going wrong, right? And even the idea of like headaches, right? I feel like a lot of people, some of us here, we get headaches. We're just like, oh, maybe it's the weather, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But if you actually take a little bit of, ownership on the situation, what did you eat that day? What were you eating that week? And really start to figure this stuff out. It's not hard. It just requires a little bit of effort, but it really will pay dividends. So interesting because when you're talking about this, I kind of went back in my head a little bit. I remember one of the first years I ended up starting to play rep soccer. This was like a big elevation from where I was just normally playing like house league. And I had like a phenomenal like 10 out of 10 game. Like I did it all. Like I saved goals, I assisted, I scored, and we ended up winning the game. And I remember at the end, like the coach that I had, Steve Jones, he was one of the most influential people in my life because he really was the first person that really started acknowledging me. And he acknowledged me in front of everyone, and it made me feel so amazing. And he said, Dev, like you had a highlight game today. This was a really standout moment. And like for everybody here, you were really a catalyst for everyone. Like, what did you eat today? And I thought about it and I was like, honestly, I only just had the smart food popcorn. And then everyone started laughing. And he's like, okay, maybe that's not the greatest. What did you have for breakfast? I was like, I didn't eat. He's like, okay, so maybe it was yesterday. Like the whole point though was it's exactly that. I had a standout moment retrace your steps. Like, what did you do? What, like, did I get good sleep? Did I have a great morning? Like, was I feeling good? What was my breakfast? How much water did I, like, if you can track those things, then
Mhm.
you can duplicate it. And I just found that, as you explained it in your program, and on your group calls and after working with you personally, I just feel like it just makes so much sense for anyone who really does care about their health and their longevity to really think about that. And I guess that leads to my next question. I know you mentioned the DNA as something that is, for some people and maybe not for everybody. Like, how would you differentiate who would you recommend, a DNA test? Who would you recommend this kind of level of health, maybe responsibility, if you had to put it onto a specific category of individual?
Yeah, it's funny. So I think knowing your DNA is good for everyone, but it's not for everyone right now, is basically how I would say it, because not everyone is ready. I would say that it's important for you to do DNA analysis when you're ready to make changes, you're committed to your health, and you want to take control. You really are ready to make that difference for yourself. Because I have worked with some people who are not quite ready for it and they have a fear, let's say. So they're fearful of a particular situation and they want to improve their health because they're fearful. And yet they're kind of locked up. Like they're just like, okay, I don't know. I'm going to have to talk to my doctor. I'm going to have to ask my doctor if this is what I should do. And I just think, let's take some time to get to know your body first. You do some tracking, and these tracking apps and some of these tools that people are, wearing the smartwatches and things like that can be helpful for sure, because they can tell you more about the moment to moment indicators, heart rate variability, things like that. But it's not looking at how you're being impacted by certain foods. You're not really analyzing those things. So it's going a little bit deeper. So for those people who are using those tracking apps, it can be great. Go a level deeper. And then if you're ready for DNA, for myself and for you, like people like us, I think it was like, yeah, that's a natural next step, is let's just do it, because I'm willing to make changes. I'm super eager to learn about my body and understand the health implications of my environment and all of the things that I'm doing. And where can I find points of leverage that can improve my performance and it can improve things for myself, rather than looking at it as a drudgery or this is going to be too much of a challenge. So I really think that's the distinction. I love the idea of everyone doing their DNA because it gives them power. Whether they use it now or later, they're going to have the power. But there are certain situations where I've met people and I think it's really sad that they didn't do it sooner, because things got down the track a little farther than things got away from them. If we know we have a high stress level, if we know that we have demands on us, that we need to be able to experience life above all of those troubles. We don't want those things to get in our way or muddy the water. We want to make sure we can smoothly pass over those things and not have any interference with what our goals and our passions and our lives are. And that's where the DNA can help us understand what we need to do to be in complete control. And really, there's never a guarantee, of course. We can't say once we know our DNA, we can guarantee that you're going to be healthy forever. That's not the case. But what we can do is recognize if we start to experience some challenges in our health, we have a data field that we can just dive into and look at and be like, oh my gosh, look at this. This is where we know what areas to look at if we have any kind of respiratory issues, if we have any kind of fatigue or brain fog, any of those things, we can look at specific areas and then look at what we're eating, how we're sleeping, what are the external factors that might be contributing to that as well.
Yeah, it's just so maybe empowering to know that there is all this information, right? And I was telling you when I went plant-based, right? Like I was worried about what could potentially happen if that was okay for my body. And that was completely good, right? And with the support from you to just be like, okay, I would check on these things, track it. It's like, a lot of people maybe aren't able to make that move so quickly, but I was able to literally in a day, make a decision to say, hey, I'm fully plant-based from this day going forward. And just knowing that I have the right support and the right tracking to ensure, the longevity of it, I think is so invaluable. And I think you even talked about not necessarily like 100% necessary at the moment, but even going gluten free, you'd suggested that there might be a little bit of complications there with those SNPs because my body doesn't break it down as, easily as maybe some other people. And it's interesting because as you had said that, we kind of made the decision to go gluten free as well. And we bought bread the other day and we noticed a difference after you've been gluten free for a little while and you don't, right? So it's just really interesting because now when you come from this approach of I'm going to do things, but I'm going to track it, you can really start to optimize because I think that's really where I'm at. I really want to optimize my life, right? I want to optimize my business. I want to optimize my performance. I want to optimize my health. And so being able to have the right tools, know what to look for, know how to add things in to ensure that it's going to be cohesive with what I'm doing or know that I need to make those necessary adjustments, I think is so invaluable. If you can, I want you to share if you have something in mind. Can you share an experience where, somebody had maybe overlooked something and you caught it with the DNA? If you remember, if I don't want to say her name, but there was a lady that was working with you and she had gone to the doctors for months and years and they had missed something. And then through the DNA analysis, you were able to catch something that now that they are aware of it, they can actually make those necessary pivots and she can actually be healthier and live a better life. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
There are so many. Yeah. Because really, honestly, every person that I work with, I'll find something that I'm like, oh, this is a game changer. Now, what's interesting is they're not always, which is great, they're not always so far down the track that they are experiencing any kind of life-threatening issue or that they're really dealing with problems daily. But an example would be I have a client who was experiencing a lot of pain. And one of the big concerns that I had was I'm so passionate about helping people. I'll have an initial coaching call with people, and it's like an assessment of what do they need? What is their main focus? What do I need to provide so that they have a very well-rounded experience through this program? And when I'm always nervous because I want to make sure that I can actually deliver. And this particular person said that her biggest goal was to overcome pain. And I talked to her more about what her source of pain was. And her source of pain is what concerned me. And that was from an accident. And that scared me because I thought, how in the world am I going to help her with pain when it's from an external force? And it was a terrible car accident that almost took her life. And she had all of these surgeries following the accident. It was just, yeah, really, really scary. And so I just did the program. I was working with her. And when we realized that she had some very serious need for adjustments to her diet. And as I was walking through her nutrition, which is the first module, is a 2-week process of going through all of your nutrients and seeing how well does your body absorb and convert the different nutrients. So in doing that, we realized that she should not be eating gluten at all, which it sounds like gluten is going to be a given for everyone, and it's not. But in this case, it was huge for her. And as soon as she stopped eating gluten, and I really did not make this connection right away, her pain level went down exponentially. And she noticed a difference within a week of stopping her intake of gluten. It takes a lot longer for the body to heal from gluten intolerance, or in her case, celiac, because that's really what the indication was from her DNA. But the inflammation goes down. It starts to slowly step down right away. And that was huge for her. Amazing how it could make that difference. And I was so relieved because it was in the back of my mind. Every time I worked with her, I was concerned that I hope I can address the pain. And you just don't know where it's going to come from because there are so many sources of inflammation. The body it uses inflammation as a tool to help you heal and to isolate a movement in a particular area if you're injured. And you can even develop inflammation as a result of oxidative stress. So that becomes more of a systemic thing. But the problem is when we develop chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation then can start to impact our health in a very negative way. So we want to make sure that we are recognizing those different sources or inputs of that would be causing inflammation and then address that. And in her case, it was a very, very helpful and even helped, she said, her sleep, her mood, her pain. It changed a lot. So it's crazy when people say they don't know if food really makes a difference for their health. I can tell you on many counts, people have realized it makes all the difference.
It's just so fascinating. I love hearing these stories, right? Because it just goes to show that like even if you have low energy or like if you eat certain food and you usually get a headache or you usually feel very bloated after, like there's reasons for it, right? And I think you'd even told me before, like what are some of the symptoms? Are we, it might be a little bit weird to say, but like are you itchy somewhere? Are things feeling a certain way? Like keep track of that. How long has that been going on for? I think a lot of us just fall into this trap of thinking like, oh, this is how it is. I always
Mhm.
get dry feet, or I always do this, or I always have this happen. That's just how it is. And I think what we're really trying to do, together is to reframe how health is, because it's not how it has to be. It's not, this is how it is. This is not how it is at all. And we actually can take responsibility and ownership of our health. And like you said, if you get to it early enough, there is a chance that you actually can, rewrite, the path on where you're going down. And rather than you maybe falling into the trap of something that has run in your generational cycles, something that is hereditary, we actually might be able to rewrite that for ourselves and then know how to handle it going forward as well. So yeah, this has been fun, Lisa. Like right before we go ahead and wrap up here, was there any final thoughts? Was there any kind of final message that you want to kind of share with people? I think this has been a fantastic conversation. And for anybody, again, like I just really want to stress the importance for myself, my health, and for the people that, that I care about, for the people around me, health is something that's super important. And I think the theme of this lesson is to really put a lot of emphasis. December of 2024, it's kind of crazy, but going into this next year, if we want to continue to thrive, if you want to really be optimal, put your health forward. So yeah, this has been amazing, Lisa. But any final thoughts from you, just based on this conversation or just anything that has come up through the conversation here?
Yeah, I would just say that health is paramount for everything that we do. If we don't have our health, it will impair us in every way, in everything that we do. So we really do need to value our health. And I think the first step is to start to get to know yourself and really listen to your body. It's not normal to have symptoms. I don't care what age you are, even injuries and things like that can be an indicator of a health opportunity and a way that we can step up. Because if we have repetitive injuries or we have things like that, we can look at the body to understand why and how to shore up the system so that we don't continue to have that problem. And I love the idea of helping people get to know their bodies so that they don't end up being sidelined and having issues that compromise all of the things they want to do in life.
This has been so fun. My last question for you, Lisa, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you, what you do, and even to like chat, where can they find you?
Yeah, I have a podcast called The DNA Advantage Healthy on Purpose. And I also have a Facebook group, which we can certainly post. And then I am on Facebook and available to chat with as well.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And again, for everyone that's listening, if you want to book a call, if you want to connect, I definitely recommend reaching out for anyone that's serious about health, for anyone that's looking to make any kind of changes, it's been extremely invaluable to me. And I know it's going to pay dividends in my life and even for the people that I care about as well. So thank you so much for being on here, Lisa. I really appreciate it. And for everyone else, guys, listen to the Dark Matter podcast. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks so much for joining me to learn about DNA health. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. If you'd like to join my free community where we delve into more details about DNA, just click community below.